one of the games that's been really talked about a lot.
Yeah.
In the last couple of weeks, and honestly, it's a game that I didn't know much about until you brought it up to me. Like I think it was like 3 weeks or a month ago, and you're like, "Hey, have you heard of this game called Firewatch?"
Yeah,
and I was like, "No." And then you told me what, like, kind of the premise of it. I was like, "That sounds like a wicked game." And then, like online, there's been a lot of buzz about it, and a lot of people have been playing it. You've played Firewatch now. Begin by telling us what is Firewatch.
So it's like it's.
He's like, stay rational, stay rational.
Firewatch is a game. So Campo Santo developed the game. It's two guys that were creative leads for the Walking Dead game from Telltale. They work for Telltale. So immediately I'm
Solid
like,
game, yeah.
sold.
Good premise.
Shut up and take my money.
Yep.
I'll buy this game because, you know, the Telltale Walking Dead game is wicked.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, and then they came out with, here's a let's play of it before the actual game was released. They gave you a little bit of, you got an idea of what the game was about and how it played, and I was like, this game is awesome. Ollie Moss is an artist who is most famous for his renditions of the Star Wars trilogy movie posters. Yeah. If you just Google Ollie Moss and hit images, you'll recognize his pictures immediately. He also did the cover art for Resistance 3.
Nice. And
he was the artist in this game, and it's gorgeous.
Really?
It's just the art in the game is just so friggin' pretty.
Yeah.
And it's just like you're playing a picture pretty much.
PS4 or PC?
PS4 and PC.
Where did you play it?
I played it on the PC.
Okay.
But there's not much difference between the PC and the PS4. And so the game takes place in 1989? Question mark? 1989 in Wyoming forest.
I can't hear the words 1989 without wanting to break into some basketball and slide. It's 1989.
There you go. Yeah.
Anyway,
so in 1988 there was a really big forest fire at Yellowstone. Yellowstone, I think?
For real or just
for real?
Game? Okay.
And the U.S. government was criticized for its lack of fire watchers there, and they essentially just let the park burn almost completely to the ground. And so in '89, there was a huge hiring campaign to get people to man these Firewatch outposts to prevent wildfires.
Sure.
And so the game starts off as kind of like a text adventure almost. You get introduced to your character, whose name is Henry, and you kind of make decisions that kind of give you an idea of what you want your Henry to be. So, you meet your wife and you're like, how do you meet her? You get a dog. What do you name the dog? And like 5 minutes into this game hits you right in the feels. Like, so this is going to be a tough review because I don't want to spoil anything about the game. But you make some pretty important decisions. And things happen to Henry that end up having him take a job in the summer in the Wyoming wilderness. The guy's in his 40s to kind of get away from it all.
Okay.
So crap happens. Okay. and so the game revolves around Henry in a and in between the text base stuff that goes on, it kind of goes into little bits of cutscenes where it's interactive as you're hiking towards the Firewatch outpost. The beginning of the game is you getting into your car, and then you get out of the car, and then you start your hike. It's a 2-day hike from where you park your car to your watchtower, essentially. And so you hike there, and then eventually you get to your watchtower. And so the only other character in this game is the person in charge of you, her name is Delilah, and she is in another watchtower that you can see in the far distance, but you never see her. She's only ever over the walkie-talkie. So this is your only source of dialogue. And so throughout, it's like a walking adventure game, kind of, pretty much.
Right.
And so throughout the game, there are instances where you'll have to talk to Delilah, and you pick different responses, and those responses kind of dictate where your relationship with Delilah goes throughout the entire game. And I mean, there are instances where Delilah asks you a question or makes a comment, and you can either come up with something witty or be a dick about it, or you could just not say anything at all, and she remembers all this stuff, and it changes the relationship between you and her.
Right.
That's a very Walking Dead kind of thing.
Yeah,
too,
it
right?
is. It's very Walking. It's very Walking Dead. Yeah, you don't see those prompts though. Yeah. There won't be like a Delilah thinks you're a real asshole. Like you won't get any of that stuff, right? So you just kind of wing it as you go along. And from the offset from the text adventure, you kind of get a sense of how your Henry would react to certain situations. So as I was playing, you know, she asked me a certain question, and I'm like, would I share that information with her, or would I kind of keep it to myself? And then I remembered, oh, well, I kind of responded with this, so I'll just keep going like with that kind of emotional play style, right? So the game, it's going to be very hard to review without giving stuff away. So there are certain points I'll bring up about the game.
Sure.
One, it's pretty. I already said that. It's like walking into a painting. It's so gorgeous. I love the art style in the game, the way it looked, the way it felt. You're just very immersed in it. It was wonderful. It was a great experience. Two, the storyline was very good? Question mark? Because like, so as the story progresses, I can say this. The story starts off with you're in your tower, you see fireworks, and you walk by a sign. You may not notice it because you may not be as explorative as I was. And I went over to the bulletin board at the parking lot, and it said no fireworks because the fire risk is extremely high.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the stupid kids, goddamn kids, are shooting off fireworks, and Delilah's like, you need to go over there and set them straight. And I was like, okay. And, you know, you walk over there and you find out who's setting off fireworks and stuff. So that's how the game starts, and then stuff happens, and the game turns into like a thriller almost.
Really?
And like to the point where I'm you can't really see me, but like I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
Like, oh God, what the hell's happening here? Like it got really good.
Really?
Yeah, and then the ending happened.
Oh no.
Goddamn ending! It's like it's just like, whoa, this stuff's going on, and it's really great, and then like the ending comes, you're like, oh, here comes the ending, and you're like, oh, so that's the ending of the game, and then the credits roll, and you're like, oh, that's really the ending of the game, and then you're like, and then you know, I kind of had to take a moment, just kind of step back and reassess the game, and I was like, does this ending make sense? Yeah, kind of, because at the point where it became like a real thriller, you were like, is this plausible? I don't know. But the story had so much promise.
Yeah.
And the way it ended, I wasn't a huge fan of.
That's surprising.
I know. Because it got so good, and then you're like, it almost felt like they were like, where does this go? I don't know. Let's just kind of wrap it up, and then here's the ending, guys.
Yeah, they like tacked it on kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's a really deep ending to it. You kind of like, oh, if you really just think about it, and then like that's what it meant, and it was really just like a game about exploring loneliness and all this stuff. I'm like, stop it. Like the game was so, like the storyline got so good, and it had a lot of promise, and then the ending happened, and I didn't really like it that much. That shouldn't discourage you as much as it probably will from playing this game, because the journey to get there was so good.
Yeah.
And like I would still recommend it. Like the ending was not great, but I'd still recommend this game because it's a lot of fun, and because it's 4 hours.
Oh, okay.
I got through this game in 4 hours and 10 minutes.
Full price? Full price game?
No, $25.
Oh, right on. Okay, cool.
So it cost $25, which I understand why. And I've seen reviews anywhere from 4 hours to 6 hours to 3 hours. People could just whiz right by this. There's a lot of little nuances that you can kind of find in the game that kind of flush it out for you and make it unique for you, kind of. Ultimately, the game starts in the same place and it ends in the exact same place. So you do have that sense of, oh yeah, my game's really unique, but is it? Because all the endings are the same.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's the journey is different for almost everybody. So, you know, the journey's there, and it's like, okay, that's really cool. But ultimately, you don't really have that sense of this is my unique story, because all the stories are going to be the same. And it made me think about the length of a game and your money's worth. The $25 is basically a Blu-ray, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, about that price.
Yeah.
And the movies are going to be like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. This game was 4.
Yeah.
Right.
And it played like a movie. It certainly played like a movie. It had a beginning, middle, and end, and there was a climax, and it was huge. And then, like, it may be one of the Star Wars movies where you're like, oh, that was it? Okay, whatever. But Was it worth $25? Absolutely.
All right.
It was 4.5 hours, and when you hear, "Oh, I've got a game and I finished it in 4 hours," you're like, "What? No, that's not worth your money. It's $25." It was it was longer than a movie, and it's interactive, and the story, for the most part, was really cool. The voice work in this game is awesome.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, Henry.
Is it anybody known?
Yes, Henry is played by Rich Sommer, and he was in Mad Men. He played Harry Crane in Mad Men.
Oh, he's Harry.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's Harry
cool.
Crane in Mad Men.
Yeah.
Here, hold on.
Moment
Here's a
like
picture of a moment.
picture?
Picture moment? Henry Crane? Mad Men?
Sure.
Okay. When I first heard him, I thought it was what's his name from CNN? He used to have a show on the Food Network.
Anthony Bourdain?
Yes, I thought it was Anthony Bourdain.
Okay.
For a little bit, I was like, that's kind of Anthony Bourdain-y. I was like, is that him? That'd be really cool if it was him. And then I found it was Summer, and I was like, oh, that's great, because I really liked him. The voice work in the game is phenomenal, and it really sucks you into the story. But the story was almost the problem, because the ending wasn't great.
Right.
And I had to stop and say, did I have fun with this game? Yes, I did. But how good is a game if the ending's bad? There were so many twists to the story, and at one point you're like, where is it? This could go anywhere, and holy crap, this is good. And then close to the end of the game, I was kind of like, oh, if this is what I think it is, no, it can't. And then it happened, and I was like, oh, come on. It's just like, there's so much promise, and then that's how it ended.
So, I mean, now that you're conflicted, what kind of score would you give this game?
One other thing, before I give it a score, there were a couple glitches in the game, but they got fixed early on with a patch, and that's okay, whatever. That happens. There were also a couple plot holes in the game. There was at one point, I'm trying to figure out how to word it without giving anything away. But there was one point where Delilah does something, and she tells you to go somewhere, so you go to that place, and you find out she was there, and you're like, why didn't she just come to my watchtower and talk to me in person? The path literally was right by your watchtower. She could have just knocked on the door and said, hey, let's talk. But she they went out of the way and did all this stuff. There were a couple of plot holes in the game where I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I said that the game's art is great, and it sucks you right into this world, and it's a forest, and you want to explore it. And the amount of invisible walls in this game are unreal.
Really?
Where this game could have very much benefited from being just like a completely open map.
Yeah, one would think it's a forest, right?
Yeah.
That's how they would play it.
As much as it makes sense that I'm not walking off a cliff and killing myself. Like, it prevents you from doing that. This is just one giant invisible wall. It still felt like almost like an open world. And I did like the way they executed exploring it, because there's no map on your game HUD or anything. If you want the map, you hit M on the computer, and his map pops up. And you have to zoom into it, and then it will show you where you are on the map, and then you got to kind of orient yourself, and you have a compass, and you kind of figure out, oh, I got to go north here, so which way's north? And okay, I figured it out. It's this way. Yeah. It's a lot more interactive, and it was very immersive in that sense, especially with the map. Like, that just sent it over the top. But the ending wasn't good, and I had fun, but the ending wasn't good, and it upsets me so much, because I wanted to just fall in love with this game. Yeah. Like, I was so much looking forward to this game, and then that ending happened, but it sounds
like you were falling in love with the game until the ending.
I was, and then the ending happened, and you're like, it's good, but it's not great. I'm giving it a 6.5 out of 10.
What?
Yes.
Wow, I did not expect that at the end.
It's just the ending was just. It just kind of just like, okay, guys, have fun. And a lot of the story is left in a lurch. You're like, okay, so what happens with Henry now? What happens with Delilah now? And you kind of are left to your own device. And hey, if you're into that, sure, whatever. Like, oh, it's got a really deep meaning, and it explored all these feelings. And it's like, yeah, that's great, but the game was fun up until a certain point when the ending happened, and you're like, what? Like,
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay, the ending is great. Now it was almost like it was too easy, the ending. I guess. I don't know.
All right.
Everything happened. It's like, oh, it's really great, but we got to wrap it up. Here we go.